Well, I'd like to welcome Josh Littlejohn to the Re-Event podcast. Josh, thanks so much for joining us today from Edinburgh.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Well, I wanted to just jump in and I've spoke a little bit about what you guys do in my introduction, but I thought it'd be brilliant to hear from you. Can you tell me a little bit about Social Bite? Where did you come from and kind of what's your aims for the organisation? Because I believe you started out as a sandwich shop on Rose Street in Edinburgh, is that right?
Yeah, about 7 years ago, myself and my colleague Gallus, we opened up a small sandwich shop on Rose Street in Edinburgh. We set up as a sort of social enterprise, so we wanted to try and do some good with it. We weren't particularly motivated by trying to make money for ourselves, but ultimately, we just wanted to try and do a bit of good. Originally, the idea didn't have actually anything to do with homelessness particularly, which has become very well known for now. Originally, the idea was just to try and make a profit, and then we'd chosen 3 different charities to give the profits away to. But within the first 2 weeks, we met this young guy who was 19 years old. He was homeless, called Pete, who was selling the Big Issue magazine on the street corner just outside the shop. And after about 2 weeks, Pete came into the shop and he kind of plucked up the courage and he asked us if he could have a job. And we sort of thought, why not? And we gave him a job in the kitchen. And he just worked very, very hard, and employment was quite transformative for him. Another job opened up, and we thought we'll try it again. And we asked Pete if he knew anybody else that was homeless, and he suggested his brother Joe, who was also selling the Big Issue. So we took Joe on. Another job came up, and we said, you know anybody else, guys? And they said, no, there's a guy, John, might be quite good. Okay, took him on. So almost by accident, we started to employ people who'd been homeless, and we started to learn a bit about their stories, a bit more about the issue. And, we just developed a real motivation to do more in that space. Then we sort of introduced this pay it forward system where customers could buy food ahead for homeless people to get for free later. And we maybe started to engage with 40 or 50 homeless people every day coming into this little shop for free food. And that kind of became the model and the ethos of the shop. Then we decided to employ a quarter of the workforce, people that would have been homeless. And we had this pay it forward thing running, and we started to expand the cafes in different cities in Scotland. And yeah, that was sort of our origins, but it happened very organically. There was no grand vision at any stage.
Fantastic. That's a really inspiring story. How many stores do you have at the moment? Sorry, shops do you have?
We've got lots of different bits and pieces. We've got 5 different sandwich shops, 2 in Edinburgh, 2 in Glasgow, 1 in Aberdeen. We've got a restaurant in the West End of Edinburgh called Vesta. We have a big central kitchen out in Livingston where a lot of the food is produced, and yeah, the different things. So it's definitely grown arms and legs.
Fantastic. And you've recently, not recently, I suppose over the last few years, you've added some events to the portfolios of the things that you wanted to do. So did you always want to be an event organizer?
Well, but actually before Social Bite, I set up an events company called Capital Events. So that was my first foray into entrepreneurship and business, and I started to do events. Yeah, so my first event I ever organised was in 2008, which was a fashion show that I put on during the Edinburgh Festival that I called the Festival Fashion Show, and then I did a Christmas gift exhibition, and then I started doing exhibitions at the SECC, which was like a ski and snow sports show, and then I came up with an event called the Scottish Business Awards, which ran very successfully for 5 years. So yeah, I love events. Like that was my first kind of passion in terms of business, and yeah, it was great to do some really ambitious events with Social Bite for more of a social purpose.
Well, you're certainly doing a lot of bigger events. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've got to where you are now, which is having thousands of people sleep out overnight and actually looking to take this idea from Scotland internationally? Can you tell us a little bit more about those particular events?
We wanted to make this project a reality called the Social Bite Village. So we'd been given some vacant land from Edinburgh Council, and we wanted to put into production 11 2-bedroom houses and create this supported community in Edinburgh. So to do that, we had to raise some money. So we came up with ideas how we might raise money, and we developed a good network in the business community. So we decided to try and tap into that network, and we came up with this event called the CEO Sleepout, which we put on in Charlotte Square, just outside the First Minister's residence in Edinburgh. And we just sent an email off to various people we knew that were chief execs and leaders in the business world. And we asked them if they would come and sleep out on this December night. We managed to get about 300 business leaders came and slept out. And they collectively managed to raise £500,000. We encouraged them to get sponsorship with their friends and colleagues and network. And yeah, so we raised a pretty staggering sum of money up from 300 individuals. And it was pretty easy to put the event on. You know, it was just basically let people in. We put on a few like acoustic, unsigned acts and some stand-up comedians and some free tea and coffee, and then people sort of slept out from midnight. So then we thought, you know, maybe we should try and take that sleep out concept and expand it, and really by this stage we start to really understood the statistics of homelessness in Scotland. We'd actually commissioned a study from Heriot-Watt University around the overarching statistics, and it became a bit of a firm belief that, you know, in the context of what a small country Scotland is and all the support that we as a small organisation had received, that those statistics in Scotland of homelessness weren't insurmountable here, and something if we had a collective focus on, we could really make some meaningful inroads in it. So we decided to try and create a big mass participation sleep out to really focus the country's attention on the issue, and hopefully raise a lot of money in the process. So we came up with this event which we called Sleep in the Park. We partnered with an events company here called Unique Events, who previously did Edinburgh Hogmanay, and we took on Princes Street Gardens. We then sort of reached out to lots of people in all walks of life in Scotland. So we went to the business world again, but we also went to the churches, to the high schools, to the universities, to the mosques, to anyone and everyone. And we encouraged people to come and sleep out on a cold December night. We managed to get 8,000 people to come and sleep out. And they collectively, yeah, it was really amazing. One of the highlights of my career and my life, you know, absolutely no doubt. Seeing all those people there, it was an unbelievable sense of camaraderie and community, and they collectively raised £4 million, which, you know, again was a really staggering amount of money. And then we repeated that last year, and we expanded it to 4 Scottish cities: Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, and Aberdeen. We had almost 10,000 people sleep out across the piece, and raised almost £4 million again. So yeah, that's been the backdrop to these events, and a lot of meaningful changes resulted from that. There's been the village was created. There's now almost 20 people living there in a thriving little community. But also there's been a big program known as Housing First that's been created off the back of these events, where 830 mainstream flats were pledged for people that were sleeping in the streets, and the funding would go towards provide a wraparound support for people in these flats. The Scottish Government then invested £6.5 million into that programme also, so we've seen some pretty big political momentum, but all off the back of these events. So it's been a really amazing campaign over the last 2 or 3 years, and yeah, this year we're planning to try and take everything that was so positive about that, and on a one-off basis bring it to an international scale.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, there's so many great examples from that. You know, events as being a way to really make a difference would certainly be one that I highlighted. The fact that you ran events and later there was people who've experienced homelessness in secure housing with wraparound support is just incredible. And for me, it shows the potential that events have. Now, in my introduction, I said that we would be talking about events that make a difference. And as events organisers, we hope and we think that all of our events make a difference, and surely do, but there are events that really do have a huge impact, and events seem to be a wonderful way, perhaps a unique way, of bringing people together who all have the same goal, a shared goal, the same goal to do something. Do you feel that about events, that they are really the best way to bring people together who all have one sense of purpose?
I think so. Yeah, I absolutely love, you know, events and everything that they can bring. You know, I think I can't really imagine another way that we could have raised almost £8 million over a 2-year period. I can't think of another way that the political spotlight would have been shone so strongly on a particular issue. I can't think of another way to.
I think if you would have been able to think of something, you would have probably done that.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think events really have a unique power to create change, to bring people together. That was the other most incredible thing about it. Was all these people, whether they were the chief execs of all these big companies, or whether it was school kids or university students or whoever it was. To see all these people from all these different walks of life together for a common purpose was incredibly inspiring. So,
Fantastic.
I think they really can make a big difference.
And certainly, being a small organisation and being a social enterprise, you can't be too risky, can you? You've got to make sure that you do things kind of gradually, so that you're not taking a huge risk. Did that really underpin your growth from 300 to one event, and then to 4 events across the country? Was trying to minimise the risk something that you considered?
Not really. It was more just that it's not like we didn't think of it in that kind of context at the start. We didn't think, if we can manage to do it with 300, then we'll do it and expand it. And then if we do that, then we'll grow it to 4 cities. And then if we do that, then we'll take it to the world. Basically, we've never had a plan, year on year. So once we did the 300 run, we're like, that worked really well. That was successful. And then at that stage, we dreamt up the idea of doing it bigger. And then when that worked, then there was different reasons behind expanding it. One was actually to de-risk it in itself, because whilst these events are really, really powerful, they've maybe got, as you mentioned, a sort of sustainability shelf life, whereby it's the kind of things that a lot of people only would consider doing once. So sleeping out on a freezing cold night, they kind of feel that they've done it almost. A lot of people would do it year on year, but certainly a big chunk wouldn't. Not only because of the sleeping out element, but because they work incredibly hard to raise money from their friends and their family, and they call in favors and they get donations. So people again think, I've already tapped up on my network last year, I can't do it again. So one of the reasons behind expanding it to 4 cities was, to take the pressure off just Edinburgh, and try and bring in different regional demographics to take part. So yeah, there's different logics behind doing it, but there was never really a long-term vision of scaling up to avoid risk.
So I suppose it was merging a dream with a bit of a plan, and that's probably a great way to support any event. We spoke about, you just briefly mentioned there about going global. Could you tell me a little bit about what you're planning to do this year? So it's taking the event out with Scotland.
Yeah, so we've just launched a campaign called The World's Big Sleep Out, which is basically, in my mind, it's a one-off, and this will be the last time we do a sleep out concept, I'm sure of it. But this is the idea is this is a one-off global moment of sort of solidarity, global moment of compassion, almost to something to the effect of an event like Live Aid, which really shone the global attention on a particular issue and raised a substantial sum of money. So we want to do a similar thing with the issue of global homelessness. So we've got a campaign called The World's Big Sleep Out. We wanted to try and get some really high profile locations to host big major sleep out events in, with a view to encourage cities throughout the world to host events. So very speculatively, I was sat in my flat in Edinburgh about 6 months ago, and I decided to cold call the New York City Parks Department with a view to trying to get Central Park maybe in New York. So I sat and phoned them up and told them about what we did in Scotland, and the guy said, that'll be absolutely impossible to do here. You've got no chance. There's a time curfew of 11 p.m. There's no precedent for overnight events.
I can't imagine you let that stop you, did you, Josh?
Well, he left the door slightly tilted open when he said the only way you would ever get that to happen here is if you got the mayor on board. So okay. So I went out to New York about a month later, and also went to Chicago as a bit of a plan B city as well, because the prospects in New York seemed so dismal. And I set up lots of random speculative meetings. So I managed to get introduced to the former chief of staff to Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and he set me up a meeting the next day in City Hall. And basically they started saying, Central Park might be difficult, but maybe Times Square could work for this. So I was like, that would be pretty phenomenal.
That's not yet. That's not a bad fallback position, is it?
No, exactly. So basically, we've been liaising with New York City and different departments and different things for the best part of 6 months, and we've got that confirmed now. So we've got Times Square confirmed as a venue where they're going to close down 4 plazas of it to have the best part of 2,000 people sleeping out. We've also got Trafalgar Square in London, so we've got Times Square and Trafalgar Square as 2 flagship venues. We've got 15 cities confirmed throughout the world at the moment to host events. So they include Barcelona, where you are, Madrid, New Delhi in India, Santiago, Chile, Chicago, every capital in the United Kingdom, so on and so forth. So ultimately, we've got a target of trying to work with 50 different cities or organizations within 50 cities to host sleep out events all on the same night. The night Saturday, the 7th of December. We've got a fundraising aspiration of trying to raise $50 million, so a massive target. And half of money will be invested back in local charities in whichever city the events take place, and the other half goes more to international homelessness and the refugee crisis and things like that. So that's our plan for December the 7th, and yeah, it's a lot of work to do to make it happen.
That sounds amazing. Well, it's a wonderful vision that you've got there. So could you tell me how the experienced event organisers who are listening, could they get involved in helping you run these types of events?
Oh, 100%. I think the main way you could get involved is trying to bring an official event to your particular city. So we've kind of got pretty in-depth literature of how these events happen logistically, the kind of budget that would be required to host one, and so on and so forth. And basically we're encouraging people to do events on a very small scale, around 300 people, which is the same as the one we did first time round, which don't cost very much at all, very easy to do, all the way through to 2,000 or 3,000 person events, which require a bit of a bigger budget. So that budget can either be covered locally by, I guess, a corporate sponsor, or alternatively by the city government may wish to, pay to host the event. But almost in all cases, there would be a requirement for a local events management company to kind of take ownership of that local event. So by all means, that local events management company could also be influential in catalyzing the process for bringing it to that city. And if anyone's interested in that, then we'd absolutely love to hear from you. The website's www.bigsleepout.com. So, you could just get in touch with us through that website. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Great. Well, I'll add a link to the show notes as well.
Great.
To make sure that no one misses that. Josh, as you know, I organised a homeless hackathon in Glasgow last year, and it sounds like we were a bit similar in that we didn't really have any particular knowledge of the causes or the cures of homelessness, but we just felt we had to do something. It might not be homelessness that someone feels passionate about, but would you encourage anyone, I mean, not just event organisers, to, how can I put it, just go and do something and try and help?
Of course. I think it's amazing. Also, sometimes if you just plant a little seed within yourself, then what grows from that? As I explained with our story, we didn't even have the vision for this to be anything to do with homelessness when we first started. We just wanted to do something. A young guy asked us for a job, and our path totally changed. And now we're talking about doing something in Times Square and Trafalgar Square. And imagine someone telling me that 7 years ago. I could have never even fathomed it. So by all means, I would suggest people just get out there and do things with whatever they're passionate with. I think when you start doing, through your work, what aligns to who you feel you are as a person and what values you have, then it's amazing what kind of doors open and crazy things happen. So yeah, definitely get out there and go for it.
mean, as I said in my introduction, you know, I really want to encourage the people who are listening to run events that make a difference. And one of the reasons that I feel so passionate about that is because, you know, I am an events organizer, have been for 20 years, but we seem to have a pretty unique set of skills that really can help. You know, we know about marketing, we know about logistics, we know about putting events on, we know about revenue. We've got the experience to do these types of events, which can make a big difference. You know, and it was brilliant to hear that you were a bit of an organizer, because I thought, you know, what you were doing was just incredible, and having not had any organizing experience would have just been amazing to do. But it's good to know that you had that little bit of event organizing experience before you jumped in to run these events. And just finally, have you any idea what the future holds past 2019 for SocialBite as a social enterprise, but also in terms of any of the different types of events you could even conceive running?
Again, you know, as I say, we've only ever took things a year by year. I think there's been a new charity has been created to govern this international sleep out, which is called the World's Big Sleep Out Trust. SocialBite is, you know, as it should be, very much focused on homelessness in Scotland. And I think that it might have sort of been not too appealing to people in New York and London and everywhere else if they were all raising money and we were shipping all the money back to Scotland, unfortunately. So we created this new vehicle to have more of an international viewpoint. So with SocialBite, I believe, you know, our focus will continue to be on trying to build a collaborative movement here in Scotland to ultimately try and reduce the homelessness numbers, to influence policy to reduce the homelessness numbers, to hopefully one day help to create a country where no one should have to be homeless here. You know, in terms of other events and international aspirations, certainly, I don't know, my view is, as I say, this is a one-off thing that we're doing this year, and then after that, I believe, you know, we'll retreat back to Scotland and just focus on what we do here. But yeah, who knows though, to be honest.
It sounds like a year is a very long time in the SocialBite offices. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Joss.
My pleasure.
I'm sure you'll give some inspiration to the people who are listening, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. All right, all the best, mate. Oh, what's the weather like today?
A bit dreary.
Okay, so a typical May Edinburgh afternoon. All right, thanks again, mate. Take it easy. See you soon.
Thanks, William. Cheers, mate. Bye.